Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very special guest with me. I have Luis Antonio. He is the developer of 12 Minutes game. It is a game that is published on Steam. You can download it. Links are in the description. So welcome Luis, welcome to my channel. It's a pleasure to have you. So can we start with a small introduction about yourself?
Hello, thanks for having me. My name is Luis Antonio. I'm originally from Portugal and I'm a game developer, and I created 12 Minutes over the last 5 years.
So Luis, tell us about the game itself. What was the idea behind the game? What is, someone who is not aware of 12 Minutes, what can they expect from the game?
So 12 Minutes is an interactive thriller about a man trapped in a time loop. You play as the husband as he comes home from work. He's having an evening with his wife. Then this intruder shows up. He accuses his wife of murder, and then there's an altercation, you pass out, and then you go back to the start of the evening. And you have to use the knowledge of what you know it's going to happen to try to change the outcome and break the loop. The loop is 12 minutes. It all happens inside an apartment, and it's all in real time.
So basically your game has a lot of replay value and players can play the narrative in different...
Yeah. The idea is to every loop, you hopefully learn a little bit more about the characters, and then you use that knowledge that you've gained on the next loop to try to open more and more as you uncover the lies and secrets of all the characters to hopefully break the loop.
That's an interesting idea. And you mentioned that you were working on this game for 5 years, right? So what was the experience working on it for 5 years? Was it like active development, or was it like an idea that was conceived 5 years ago and then it took the shape of what it is today?
It was a pretty slow, take my time kind of development. The first years I was working on The Witness, actually another independent game. And during my free time, I was learning to program and developing the prototype. Then after a year or two of that, I got funding, and that's where the actual development began. But for a while, it was just me for a couple of years. And then as the game had a stronger shape, I grew a team until we had a proper development team. So it was like a very gradual, slow, no rush process.
You know, it's a unique game. Developing unique games is kind of like a hard task to do because you have to imagine a lot of things. So what was the idea behind designing your core game loop? And what was your process like when it comes to documentation, or let's say the entire process in general? What was the step-by-step process that you took as an approach for developing your game?
I think one of the goals, one of the driving motivators of the process was to be open to whatever is going to become. So there was this initial premise of exploring this accumulated knowledge that the character has, and seeing how can I use knowledge as a core gameplay element, and how to do that as a mechanic. And then I slowly tried to see what would come out of that. I didn't know when I started. I didn't know it would be a couple in an apartment. I was open to anything. I didn't even know what genre it would be. If it would be a platformer, if it would be a third person. So that it was a lot of process of trying ideas and seeing what works for the premise, and then slowly owning in on those ideas until the final product.
And guys, I would like to mention over here that Luis had also spoken at Indian Game Developer Conference back in the day. I'll leave that link in the description as well. That's a very informative talk wherein Luis deep dives into the entire process of how he designed the time loop. So definitely a must watch. And Luis, coming back to your journey in game development, 12 Minutes was not your first game, right? You already had like a background in game development. So what was your journey before 12 Minutes?
I've been in the industry for over a decade before I did 12 Minutes. My core experience in the industry is as an artist. I started as an environment and character artist at Rockstar years ago. I was there for like 3 or 4 years. Then I moved to Canada. I worked at Ubisoft. I was a lead artist, and I was an art director. And then I decided to go independent, where I worked on The Witness with Jonathan Blow. And then finally I decided to learn to program and try to do my own project, see what's going to happen.
That's an interesting and very courageous step that you took, like going from working for AAA studios and then going indie. hats off to your dedication towards that, and you've been successful enough, achieving your goals as well. 12 minutes was picked up by Annapurna Interactive. They published the game. So what was it like going from working for a AAA studio and then going indie? What was the hardships, or what were the learnings that you took from your job experience and then inculcated that in your indie journey?
It was a very gradual process. Like while I was at Ubisoft, like the last few years, I was starting to get more and more, maybe a bit frustrated or dissatisfied with the way they develop games, at least to what I want to do as a game developer, right? They have this more, right? What drives their games, I think, is mostly, above all, making sure the game will be profitable and it will sell. And I was looking more into exploring, game design challenges. So I was already in contact with a few independent game developers. And so when I decided to leave, I just looked who would be interested to work with me. So it was pretty smooth. It was, honestly, I think I felt more stable as an employee to work with independent developers than with AAA. In terms of challenges, it's super different. Like AAA, they have a very strong pipeline and workflow, but there's this constant struggle between creativity and whatever the producers want to do to make sure the game makes money. While independent games, at least the ones I worked on, it was 100% about game design and creativity. Like all our challenges were not, are we gonna add, like crafting or XP or crates or whatever, but more, what are we trying to do with this project, and what are the design goals, and how do we convey those visually?
Awesome. And now, now that you made the switch from AAA to indie, a lot of your time must have gone into, going through that entire learning curve, primarily because when you're working in a AAA studio, maybe you're working on just 1 or 2 modules, but then suddenly you make the switch and now you're indie and you're doing everything under the sky. So what were your learning experiences while working on The Whistle, and how did that kind of, extrapolate and help you in the journey for making 12 minutes?
So I think that the biggest thing in an indie studio is that you're not an artist. Like you said, like in AAA, you have a very clear mandate of what your skills are and what you're expected to do. As an indie, it was, you do whatever needs to be done to get the product out. So for example, on The Witness, I not only did the art for the game, but I did the website. I made the trailers, recording them, editing them, finding the music, poster design, all the assets for the store. It's just whatever I'm able to do and needs to be done. Even working with the programmers to find shade, it's a much more open, you're a developer and you want to get the game done versus having a very constrained and defined role. I think that's the biggest difference.
And one thing I was curious about, I remember you mentioned 12 minutes as a narrative time loop based game, right? So when it comes to, that narrative aspect, you worked with quite a few, well-known personalities for the audio voiceover. So what was that experience like?
That was amazing. First, I think we were super fortunate that they were interested in the material, and they were interested in the challenge of creating those voices. And then there was this, like on my side, I had this, my challenge was to make sure that during the recording sessions, right, they knew exactly at what point in the narrative they were in, and they had all the material to define and work the characters. And they were super talented. It was crazy. They were always able to bring so much to the table and solve so many issues and decisions about how the characters behave and say certain things. It was great. They helped elevate, I think, the game to something stronger than what it was before the voice acting.
Also, because this brings me to the point wherein I actually ended up watching a few videos of 12 minutes game. Personally, I haven't played the game yet. I will actually, I'll make a commitment on my channel right now that I'll play 12 minutes and perhaps even try to stream it. But whoever is watching this video, guys, I would definitely recommend you guys to please try out this game, because it is clearly a game made with patience, with a lot of love, and with a lot of thinking, around what different choices you can make. It is something that is that will challenge your brain, and something that you will not find in your day-to-day general type of games that you see. So hats off for that effort. I think you've done a great job in that front. Now, when it comes to making such games, what was your decision that what that triggered to making this as a completely different game? And you touched upon this a little while ago, that you wanted to make games that were experiences. So what drove you for the story of the game?
So like I said, it was a very gradual process. I like when I sat down, right, to work on the game, I realized that, right, once you learn to program, you realize that there's a lot of very small choices you make on how your game plays that will affect the whole thing. And I started to question a lot of these choices, like what position should the camera be in? Why should the camera be behind the character? Should the camera, like, because I'm controlling the camera, how should you interact with the world? I suddenly realized that I was used to making calls about how to make design decisions based on, let's say I don't know, I love third person action games. So the camera is going to be third person. But I started to question, is third person the thing that best serves the game? And like in that example, right, I wanted a game that was very accessible. So I knew that being top down would allow you to navigate the apartment without having to, navigate a 3D camera. So suddenly, like, there was this slide inside of, okay, let's actually question every single decision of every design element, how the inventory shows up, everything you do, and see if those are serving my goals of making an accessible interactive thriller. And I think that's what led the game to be a bit unusual in the way it's presented and the way it unfolds. It was just questioning the decisions that before were kind of made blindly in whatever games I used to like.
And when you launched the game, did your expectations of how it would be perceived by the audience match?
So that's tricky. Like, it's I've learned not to have many expectations, because you never know how people will react. And even I think you've seen, even with movies, like some movies are very well received and then they don't age well, or they're very badly received and become a cult classic. Like I had two goals. One goal was at least make sure we cover the development costs and we make enough money that I can do another game. That was like one of the goals. The other one was at least, like, these things that I'm trying to explore have at least a certain amount of people that connect with it, and there's an emotional connection with the experience that was created, and I think that definitely happened. I think there was also some controversy and questioning, but I think that's very healthy. I mean, that's I think what you want, and the game was designed to be open-ended to allow for those discussions. So I think I'm very happy with the reception and how people perceive it, and how there's, like, I literally get, like, yesterday I had a review. It's a masterpiece, 9 out of 10. And this sucks, it's so badly made, 6 out of 10 or something. And I was like, there's this interesting, there's a reaction to it, right? People are definitely feeling emotions, and that's kind of, that was the goal, right? To get some experience that you have a reaction to. And because the game is about how you interact with what you're learning. So people definitely connected, which was what I was looking for.
There was a little bit of mocap involved as well, right?
There was quite a lot of mocap, actually. We did 10 sessions, 11. We did 11. Yeah, I think it was 11 or 12, but I think it was 11 full day mocap sessions. We recorded over like 1,000 animation movements. Those were pretty intense. It was a process of, so early on, going to the beginning to development, I realized that hand animating is very time consuming. And because we are fortunate enough to have a small environment, a lot of, like, if they're dancing or if they're eating or even some struggles, we could mocap those. And in a day it's a bit like the actors, you can direct the animation, and I can see the animation being directed versus having someone keyframing an animation and then iterating it over and over. So yeah, it was a process of learning how to mocap, learning how to direct the mocap actors, and then just just building all the content and connecting it. I think the hardest thing for me was that the game started as something very small. It was like the first year that I got funding, my goal was just, it's going to be a tiny game. There will be no voice acting, barely animations, and I do this in a year. And then as it grew, I expanded the team to be able to grow the game into something bigger. But because it wasn't designed to grow, there was a lot of things that I just couldn't, delegate to other people. So I ended up being kind of a bottleneck in the project, which that was a lesson for the next one, where I'll hope to build something that I can bring people on much earlier, so I don't have to do all the work, or most of the work, let's say. Yeah.
And the apartment itself is quite, fascinating. So what was your thought process behind designing the apartment the way it is in the game?
So the apartment was like, for those who play the game, you'll see it was all based on design. Like, I knew it had to be small. I knew the size made sense to match the screen size. So the layout is 16:9. And then the apartment was just being designed always based on the gameplay restraints. Like, we want the wife to read a book, so we need a couch. We want them to have a meal, so we need a table. And I don't know how much spoilers we can go into, but like the position of the bathroom door in relation to the front door, the position of if the wife is in the bedroom sitting in the chair, I don't want her to see what's happening in the living room, so it needs to be at this angle. So the apartment, the design of the art direction of the apartment was always based on the design constraints, even realizing, like, if we have a top-down camera, then what happens on the floor is more important than the walls. So changing the colors of the walls, so you look at the floor, having an outline for for the doors, and just visually communicating what is necessary, so you very organically discover where things are in the apartment and how to use them.
That's quite interesting, and you have to make all of these things extremely intuitive, right? So when you were developing this game, how did you decide that, hey, whatever I've built is like will get perceived well by the audience? Did you have like a small tester group that used to play test the game for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, that was I think as a game developer, a big thing is just testing your game constantly. I mean, first through the development, like even the puzzle design and how to approach certain challenges, I was like daily, because I was working on The Witness, so I had all these developers around and friends, so it was a constant, hey, what do you think if you hide in the closet? Oh, what do you mean? Oh, you do this. So there was this constant conversations about how they felt about those decisions. And yeah, just having people play it over and over. And a lot of the game was actually, because I wanted to be very organic in the sense that a game doesn't tell you what to do. A lot of it was people playing and telling me what they would do. And then I would try to implement those things and build a narrative around the more logical behaviors people would have, so that you could, I think it works in a way where people just naturally try the things inside what we allow them, and they try to find the solutions inside what's allowed. Like, for example, like, people are not going to try to drag the couch to block the front door. They understand the couch is not a movable object. So it was making this a very organic process of naturally using the elements.
So basically what you're trying to say is people learn to, play within the constraints of the world that you create for them. Am I right?
Yeah, without being verbally told what to do.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of trial and error, but the error process is hopefully as rewarding as the trial, where if you try something and you fail, it's an accumulated knowledge that you use. It's not a failure, it's just a learning that might actually be a path later on. But keeping it, like, I think the biggest challenge was making sure you learn enough for the next loop, but not too much that you get overwhelmed, because the game is not telling you you've learned this and this. It's all in your head. So making sure you don't ever get confused with what you've learned, but it's enough to keep, you're building objectives in your head as you play. So making sure those objectives are always clear enough that you don't get extremely frustrated, but some frustration is designed into the game.
Absolutely. And making a brilliant game is one thing, and then getting it out there in the market, making sure that it reaches to the right set of people is another thing. So you have now, you finished with the development, and now you were out there trying to get this game published in the market. So did you approach like a lot of publishers? Did you get any kind of rejections from publishers? And then eventually, as it turns out, Annapurna Interactive did publish your game. So what was that process like?
It's a really good question, and I'll demystify it for everyone that has no idea. This is like getting a job. Like I built a prototype. So this was the like I think there's two ways to approach publishers or whoever's going to fund your project. One of them is you have an idea, you try to convey that idea through documents, and then you try to pitch it. I personally find that's very risky because once you start developing, you're going to learn a lot of things, and then maybe you need twice the money you asked for, or maybe your game goes in another direction, but now you already have a contract with someone, and it's just unpleasant on all sides and cuts creativity. So based on that, what I did was I had a prototype of the game that I would present to anyone who was interested in funding, and they would just play the prototype. And the prototype was, I would say, like 80% of the final product without the production, like the production values of the final version. So, and even before that, actually, so once I had the prototype, I showed it to reporters and I went to festivals. And that I got some awards, some mentions, I got some articles about it. So when I approached publishers, I already could tell them, look, people like the game, reporters think it's very promising, and you can play it. So there's no discussion that this is very likely to succeed. Now the question is, do you want to be part of it? But even saying this, right, this was over a year of meeting many publishers, and it wasn't so much rejections like a job offer or something, but it was more, are we going to work well together? Because I think, right, are my goals aligned with the publisher goals? And I think a lot of publishers still have a very old school model of what they like. They want some assurances, like let's release in this window, let's not have too much violence, let's signal some things to the player. So it was looking for a publisher that would understand what I want to do, which was like, you give me full creative control and you just kind of pay for it. Actually, early on, I signed with Microsoft, the ID at Xbox program, with the first publishers who were just, here's some money, do whatever you want. And then halfway through, when the game grew into something bigger, that's when I partnered with Annapurna, and we had the exact same vision. So it was like a family, like friends working together. We were bouncing ideas and like getting the actors, taking this cinematographic and filmic direction. It was something we both wanted, and so it worked really well.
So essentially what you're trying to say is, when you're trying to approach a publisher, first establish your own credibility in the market, and then over a period of years, you will eventually crack a publisher deal. Am I right?
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, I would say you imagine the opposite. Imagine someone is asking you for money to do something, right? You want to believe that they know what they're doing. So the more you're able to show that you have an idea of what you're doing. I mean, I didn't even mention, but right, apart from the prototype and the reviews and the articles, there was also a plan of the people, the whole production process, the marketing costs, all those things. Yeah, I think it's just showing that you know what you're doing as much as possible, and that even the things you don't know, you're accounting for them. And the other part is just understanding very well what the publisher wants out of it, so that if the moment you start partnering together, it's going in the direction you both want.
So Luis, what have been your personal favorite games growing up over the years?
So I grew up in a house with just PCs. My father was a programmer.
Oh, awesome.
So there was no consoles, because they believed consoles, you can only play games, you cannot do anything creative. So I grew up with the Monkey Island games, the old Prince of Persia, Jordan McNair, Another World, the Star Wars games, the TIE Fighter, X-Wing. I think a lot of simulator kind of games, or Doom, Quake. But I think like if we speak about 12 minutes more specifically, or even my career as game developer, I think the more narrative driven ones, like Another World, the Monkey Island ones, like all the point and click, they had this very strong narrative. aspect to it, even though they missed, I think, the adventure side, like Prince of Persia that I mentioned. Yeah, I think those are the ones I grew up with.
Great. So Doom was actually my first game that I ever played in my life. I remember that.
That's a great start.
Yeah.
And my story was basically my dad had bought this system back in the day. It had like Windows 95 operating system on it. And I used to sit on his lap and he used to show me that, hey, this is a computer and this is how you play games. So that was my entry into gaming. So it was refreshing to hear from you that, Doom was one of your early games that you had played as well.
I mean, it wasn't super. I actually remember when I played Doom, I had already played quite a few games before, but Doom was, I actually even saw it in an there was an exhibition somewhere where they had a local LAN network set up with Doom.
Yeah.
And I think it was the first 3D game that I played where you were like, right, there was this big, I mean, I had played Wolfenstein before. But Doom had this all, like the sound design and the movement was jaw-dropping. Or like, how did they pull this off?
My next question is, let's say, for example, someone wants to go indie. Let's say they do not have any experience in the past. They haven't worked for any studio. What would your advice be? Should they go and work for a studio, or how should they structure themselves?
I think anything you do by yourself, like if you want to jump into independent games by yourself, there's a lot of learning that needs to happen to do video games, I think, right? There's this basic technological understanding of a game engine, of all the version controls, the file organization, naming conventions. I mean, it's pretty hardcore if you want to learn through trial and error. But there's a lot of tutorials and things out there. But I think nowadays with the current climate, I think your best option would be to start, like, if you want to really go indie, I think, do some game jams or try to find some people that already have experience so you learn from them before you jump straight into your own thing. Unless you want to do something really small. But I mean, I think nowadays you can do kind of anything. I would just say, be aware of your limitations so you can, work on them and making them grow. Like I see quite a lot actually, especially when I remember when you go to all the festivals, there's a lot of people who are like, I love, I don't know, Oblivion or Morrowind or these mega RPGs that are made by 300 people and they want to make their own, right? And then after 3-4 years, they realize that they're completely, because just network code or streaming assets is such a complicated technical challenge that they never. So start small, I think, and slowly grow as you get more comfortable. Because what you mentioned earlier, like just the process of releasing a game is an odyssey, from, marketing, QA, localization, making a game accessible, allowing from the menus, from being able for a person to be able to control your game, get in and out of it and understand how it works is already pretty complex. So getting those bases straight so that you can build on top, I think having experts or people with experience, I would say, if you find them, you should work with them. Yeah.
Thank you, Luis. I think that was a great wealth of information shared from your end. Guys, I would recommend you guys go ahead and try out all the games that Luis has worked on. And Luis, any parting thoughts from you? Any recommendations? Anything that you want our viewers to check out? Anything at all?
I would say, yeah. I mean, if you want to play some indie games, some cool indie games, I would say try out Papers, Please. Try out Today I Die. Shadow of the Colossus is not an indie game, but it's a pretty good game. And other things, I don't know. Yeah, I would say if you play 12 minutes, to be very open-minded to what the game is without expectations. And if you get stuck in the game, it's okay to be stuck. Don't go online. Just wait 2 or 3 days before you play again. And check out The Witness is pretty. I mean, it's the guy who designed the game, Jonathan Blow, I think is one of the biggest, like one of the best designers I've ever met in my life. And the game design in the game is just pure. I mean, even Braid, I would suggest playing, which is his previous game. Yeah.
Jonathan Blow is like the indie superstar, right? Braid, everyone knows about Braid, and such an amazing experience where that game offers. So Guys, check out The Whistle, check out Braid, check out 12 Minutes as well. And Luis, thank you very much. That was an extremely kind session from your end and quite informative as well. Thanks a lot. And hopefully this provides a lot of value to the viewers.
Thank you for the opportunity.